Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. It means the whole wide world. Today I'm going to talk about the books I read in the month of February. Two videos ago, I believe, I did a little romance marathon in the week leading up to Valentine's Day. So those 5 books I won't really be discussing in detail because I made a whole video on them, so I'll kind of just give a very brief synopsis, hopefully just a sentence or two. We all know I like to chat, so that's kind of the little heads up there. I will be going into more details on the books that I have not spoken about on this channel. So yeah, let's get into it. The first book I read this month was When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. Not certain on the pronunciation of his last name, but this is the book that I read. This was the first book of the month, and okay, so if you've seen my other videos, I think you can kind of understand that I like to read books on death and dying. I think it is very interesting. You can learn a lot from them. And after I read Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Caitlin Doughty, I kind of realized how detached Western culture in particular is to the process of dying and then death itself. We just don't really have a firm grasp on it. Or if we do, it revolves around a lot of mourning instead of appreciating life. So I like to read books on this topic so that I can, get an insight into how different people deal with it. So I was really excited to read this, and okay, I still really liked it, but I didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to. The concept of it, and I don't like using the word concept because this was his actual life, the situation itself seemed extremely interesting and also very heartbreaking. So before you even start this book, you know that the author has died, and before becoming a surgeon, after years and years of education, he gets diagnosed with cancer and ends up dying. So it's kind of his journey coming to terms with the reality that what he worked so hard for will never actually come to fruition, and also the fact that he's leaving his family behind. So that's kind of what the book is about. I don't know what specific thing it was in the book though that I felt was missing, because it's beautifully written. He has a really lovely way with words. There was just, I don't know, maybe I just wasn't as attached to this particular story as I have been to others. That's not to say I didn't really like this book, and there were definitely valuable things that I learned from it, and it is a very touching story. I just didn't love it as much as I expected to, but I would still highly recommend this memoir if that's a kind of topic that you also enjoy reading. So yeah, that's the first one. The second book I read this month, which is a massive success for me, is Misery by Stephen King. I've contemplated reading Stephen King for so long now, but he's just one of those authors that I never got around to it because I was scared. So I finally did it, and I attribute the majority of that to the fact that this was my buddy read with Veronica, and we read it together, and we both really enjoyed it. It was just so fun and so chilling, and his entire description of Annie Wilkes and the state that she lives in and the things that she does and how detailed her character is so brilliant in order to really creep you out. There's this recurring theme of smelly breath, and that's such a gross thing to describe in the book, but it ends up being such an important aspect of Annie Wilkes' character because it really just drives the point home that she's just, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just all of the detail that goes into her character really, it's just perfect in order to make you feel super spooked and you just want him to get out of there, but it's really good, and I highly recommend it. I think if you've never read Stephen King, this is a totally doable first book to read. It's not overly complicated, it's really fun. You get through it really fast, so I'm so excited. Misery by Stephen King was wonderful. Then I also read, this was part of my original romance marathon, and I was supposed to include it in the video that I filmed 2 weeks ago, but I didn't end up getting around to it, and that was Beachfree, which I was super excited to read, and I loved it. That was definitely right after the Bride Test. I think it was my second favorite out of the bunch, and it was such a fun read. And I say this every single time I speak about a romance that I really like, I like that there was a lot of depth to the characters. There was definitely a very heavy discussion on grief and family trauma. I just really appreciate when two characters are falling in love, but they kind of come together and help each other heal, you know? So the basis of the love isn't just physical attraction or really superficial love. It genuinely has a deep like a deep coming together point. Does that make any sense? Hopefully. But I really, really enjoyed it. It was fun. It made me chuckle. It is very beautifully written. I found myself really, really enjoying the actual writing of it. The build up to it, it definitely is more of a slow burn. So if you do like a slow burn, then you'll definitely really like that one. Overall, I thought it was a splendid romance. I really, really enjoyed it. And not... Was it very steamy? Why do I want to say it wasn't too steamy? That's probably because my standard for steaminess is now so high because of the other books that I read. I will double check. I will refresh my memory if it was very steamy or not, and I'll leave it in the description because last time a girl commented on my video saying that she liked that I did a steaminess rating in my description, so I'll do that again for this one. I just can't remember. It was probably steamy, to be quite honest. And now that we're on the topic of love, I'm gonna quickly just do a very rapid synopsis of the other 5 romances I read this month. Again, if you want a detailed description, I will link it up here. I think that's where you link it, up here, somewhere on the screen, or I'll leave it in the description below. That's such a YouTuber thing to say. So the 5 books I read in the week leading up to Valentine's Day were The Notebook, Red, White, and Royal Blue, The Duchess Deal, The Bride Test, and The Unhoneymooners. Those were the 5 books that I read. The Notebook, frankly, I would just stick to the movie. It's kind of the sentence that I will provide you with on this video. I was definitely more passionate about this discussion in the other video, but I'm going to leave it at that. The Bride Test, as we all know, The Kiss Quotient was one of my favorite books last year and is one of my favorite romances of all time. This is the sequel to it. It is perfection. The autism representation is everything. The romance is everything. The immigrant story is so important. Everything about that book is so important. I loved it, loved it, loved it. Then we have The Unhoneymooners. This is, I would categorize this one more like a romantic comedy. There definitely is a comedic focus in it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. There were moments that I was a bit irritated because, again, there were just things that could have been avoided had they, you know, dealt with it in a different way. But again, it was fun. I enjoyed it, and that's that for The Unhoneymooners. And then The Duchess Deal, which is a historical romance. Steamy, okay? First and foremost, very steamy. Very steamy. There are things that are antiquated, but of course it's a historical romance, so that is the point, so you can't really be too mad about it. She has kind of mastered the craft of transporting you to a different time, so it was very fun to just feel like you were in a completely different time and environment and everything. So those were those. And then, guys, last but absolutely not least, because this was my favorite book of the month and is going to be ranked as one of my favorite books of all time, one of my favorite classics, one of just top tier is kind of what this book has become for me. And it took me so long to read. I was actually planning to read so many other books because February is Black History Month, so I had a wonderful stack of books that I wanted to read, and I ended up not getting to them because I read this book, and it's a really small book, but it took me over a week to read, more than a week. It took me so long to read it because I just had to underline and annotate every other word, so it was a long, tedious process, but it was so enjoyable. So I will transfer the books that I had that I wanted to read this month to next month. You know, I'm still going to read them, but I just didn't get around to them this month. Regardless, all of that, just to say that that book is Maurice by E.M. Forster. I absolutely loved this book. It is so beautiful. It is such a thought-provoking read. It is so heartbreaking. It makes you feel lonely because I think he actually pronounces it Morris instead of Maurice. but I don't know why I like The Sound of Maurice better. Regardless, you feel so lonely because he's so lonely, and you get so attached to the character that it's very hard for you not to feel what the character is feeling. But in a similar vein, when he's happy, you feel so happy. At least I did. I was very, very, very invested in this character, and in the characters in general. Ugh. You know what? So one of my favorite books of all time is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. It's a similar kind of situation to this, so if you like that, please, please, please give it a go. Or if you haven't read that one, it doesn't matter, still give this a go. It is so beautiful, and I can't recommend it enough. I did, in fact, essentially read the whole book to my mom because I would get so excited, and I would read a sentence that just wounded me, and I would run to my mom and be like, let me read it to you, let me read it to you, and then she would just kindly listen to me freak out about this beautiful magical book. And I will treasure this copy always because it is violently annotated and it makes me so happy. So yeah, that was the last book I read this month, and I'm really content about it. I have so many exciting books to read in March. It is Women's History Month, so I'm very excited to read a ton of diverse literature, hopefully all written by women. So I'm really, really excited. And as always, thank you so much for sharing your time with me, and I'll see you when I see you.